Jacks. I haven't seen a Cracker Jack.
Yeah, right. Wow.
Oh, if they
It
still have
is,
the prizes. in
It is 6
I
o'clock.
used to have the prizes.
It is 6 o'clock and the recording has begun. Clayton Cargill, the chair, is absent. I'm the vice chair, so I'll call the meeting to order. The first business is, are there any suggestions for additions or changes to the printed agenda?
I think so.
Next, there's an update on the deferred maintenance priority items. Molly has that and she has a presentation.
Not too big of a presentation, but
Yeah, but ran.
yes. So you all got Clayton's email about our board meeting that we had recently about the lighting and the ventilation. So just based on our discussions here and the information from Sean, we thought we could start to take some action on some of the work that we're doing together. So our next board meeting, Mark's gonna be bringing some information, and Sean, you're probably in on that too, about costs for those two items, and we'll start talking about the best way to go about that. And so we wanted to see if any of you have questions before that meeting or comments, suggestions, just to hear your thoughts before we go into that meeting. And we hope you all can come to that meeting too.
Can you just let us know, I haven't had a chance to check, just like where it's landing essentially. So this meeting is in June.
So June 6th, is that right? Is that the
And this was like the
Yeah.
air handler, like I saw some conversation, this was like essentially this priority
Yeah,
they were talking about with the air handler situation. And I just don't know, so forgive me. Is there like, or do we have solid numbers to work with? Like, what is actually happening June 6th? Is that like a vote for here's our numbers? Is it all good?
yeah, we're gonna have a discussion on the, I think we're getting some bids, doing a mark, and we'll talk about the bids that have come in, and then see where we're at about a plan, whether we want to spread it out over, 2 years or 5 years, or what the best way to do that is, with the amount of money that we're seeing for the quotes.
Okay.
So we'll have that, June 6th will be that discussion, and then just see where we land with those numbers, yeah.
And I was just curious if I was able to meet with Mike Pichak, the state treasurer, twice. He had done like a presentation, which I can update you guys on the school construction. And one of the conversations, we went through this paperwork together, and I don't know if you guys have looked into just with the Inflation Reduction Act, if there would be potential coverage, because there is this one thing here, which talks about heating, cooling, ventilation. So obviously this is like a big push for like the energy efficiency, and I have the paperwork that I can share here, but I don't know if that's something that Tucker already explored or you guys explored with regards to, is there a funding stream that could come
They
into
would go
play?
through several different things.
That's what I
I'm sure
thought,
that that's.
if they did
included
it.
into it, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm because it just seemed like if that was a possibility and it might help from an aid standpoint.
Right.
Yeah, so,
If you have any information on to submit to the board for
yeah,
consideration, that would be fantastic.
yeah, that's what I brought here.
And the sooner the better. Also
Yeah.
on, if we can get information on, so we don't have to be at the, arrive at the meeting on June 6th and be given
Yes,
an understanding what it is. If we can get numbers or something like, whatever you can provide us, so we can do our own research and just look at the numbers. That would be great too. I mean,
And
if you
that's
have
what-
it- If you have it in writing, it helps for,
yeah, I can definitely
as soon as
submit
possible.
this and get this to you guys right now. And I was just curious, with regards to the solar, is the windmill working right now or no?
It's not.
Yes.
Oh, it's going. I remember when my son was here and they were gonna look at it. So it's,
been retired.
and what about from a solar standpoint? Is there anything like
We have
significant?
the giant solar farm right
That's
next
all
door.
tied in here.
That's Danville, Twinfield and Cabot. It's a conglomerate. And
Okay.
kind of share the funds depending on the energy that the schools are using.
Right. And I was just wondering, just like the way this might play out, that might have to be looked at for like, could a percentage be going towards ventilation in order to be able to receive funding? So I'll just submit this. And obviously, if I can help with seeing if it's applicable, I was just wondering if it knocks anything down. It just was specific for what the priorities are right now.
And we
Yeah.
send that directly to Clayton. That would-
Yeah, I can email a link of that, definitely.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Mark said something about a rebate from Efficiency Vermont too, that, I don't know if you heard me more about that, Sean, but that there might be a possibility there with Efficiency Vermont.
Yeah, I don't know how significant, but anything helps.
Anything helps.
Exactly, yeah,
So, yeah, any other questions or comments on that part?
and I'm
Is
so,
this one system that's all tied together to the whole complex, or is it different systems that have to be up?
So what they're talking about is the HVAC and the lighting upgrade, and those are two 100% campus. So the HVAC is the entire campus,
It's all
all
tied.
10 air handlers. Yep.
Okay,
But is it up on the roof or is it
So-
in the building?
What we're looking at right now is a 1-for-1 replacement. So we have
Oh.
10 air handler units, two are inside the building, one air exchange is inside the building. And the other 7 are up on the roof.
Yeah.
There was a concern with weight, wasn't there, on the roof?
That the weight concern was one of the directions they were looking, were taking 3 of the systems and tying them all together with one unit. And they were thinking about putting it on the gym, but the roof can't hold it, so we're sticking
And they
with.
can't go on the ground,
They, some of them can go on the ground. I don't know if,
that's what we do.
to my knowledge,
Plan-
nobody's
plan
looked
for
at,
a Single story, but
right, we're just looking right now as a 1-for-1 replacement.
and those had been determined, obviously, as we've all gone through the conversation of like top priorities has to happen, so it's gonna be taken up. And then see, and then we'll have a number. And then where will it go from there? Is then it gonna be voted on by you guys?
So we would vote, and then if we're going over 5 years, it would have to go through the town at that
Right.
point, so the process would start with the town.
So we'll know more details in June.
Yeah, we'll see where we land in June. with
Okay.
numbers. So I hope you all can come to that too, because been part of this would be really helpful to have you there and hear the information when we're hearing it as well.
Mhm.
So
and you said you're gonna try to provide information beforehand,
if
so.
we get, we don't always get it before the meeting, but yeah, I think we'll all probably get it at the same time, I'm guessing.
Okay, I didn't know if it was just limited to the school board that would get, or you're intending for.
For that meeting. it would-
Let's
yeah.
urge that everybody, please get your stuff in as soon as possible.
Mhm.
And that everyone on the building committee will be included on the information that we get. And hopefully, everybody on the building committee will be there. But at least you can have the information that we're gonna be reading when you get there.
Mhm. And who's providing that information at this point?
I'm,
Mark and Sean are.
What you guys have been working on? Okay, gotcha. Okay,
And
good.
then, I defer to probably Clayton, or somebody, or anyway. I'm gonna put it on Clayton to make sure that it goes out to everybody on the building committee.
Mhm. Okay,
Hearing no objections, that's what you get for missing a meeting.
right.
So I'm sorry, before we continue, I should have asked everybody to identify themselves. And as well on Zoom, so I'm Dave Toll, Vice Chair.
I'm Molly, clerk. Katie Wade.
Mary Dee,
Rob Valade.
Lance Warren,
Eric Hewitt.
Allison Despathi.
Doug Pastula.
Sean McNamara.
Tim Sanborn.
Melissa Conlon. And then we have Zoom. Do the Zoom people want to go ahead?
Hi, this is Bruce Melendi. How's everybody doing tonight?
Sarah's off the Zoom
And
right.
Sarah's off, but there's one more, GVCM is the name.
I know Karina Shippey was trying to get on.
Okay. So it's you.
John Black is on the group, isn't he? Still?
Uh,
And that way we have everybody's voices to help with the recording. Okay,
Okay, so that was my update, and then we're gonna move on, and the other piece of this is we thought it would be productive to focus on the space issue today, and really use the time we have today on space, so Melissa's gonna take it from there.
Yeah, so Monty has pulled together a list of sort of all of the overarching ideas that has popped up at various meetings. So our hope tonight was that we could branch off into some smaller groups to kind of review this list. And together figure out, is there information missing that we want to have at our disposal as we consider some of these ideas? Or are there overall ideas that didn't make this list that we want to make sure do get included and considered? So every group will have a copy of this list, but I'll sort of just read the highlights. So option number 1 is using community buildings. And then there's some more details under that heading, but community buildings, adding an additional structure on site is sort of number 2. Again, there's some more specifics underneath that. Option number 3, or idea number 3, I should say, not option, is demolition and rebuilding, right? So that can look different based on sort of what gets talked about. Tuitioning high school students is option number 4, or idea number 4. And then number 5 is the concept of a regional high school. So our hope is that as a group, you can look at this list. You've got 3 questions to sort of consider. Number 1 is, are all of the options viable and realistic? If not, which ones can we very clearly cross off this list and sort of move to the side and not sort of get stuck thinking about anymore? Number 2, is there more information needed on any of these options? And if so, who and how do we gather that information? Where do we get it from? And then number 3 is, if you feel like in your group, you can come to a place where you could maybe identify 2 of these options that would address the need for space. One sort of is like an immediate fix, and then another one is sort of our long-term plan. The other document that you have in your packet is from the January 2023 principals report, which is a list of facility-related program needs. So if that helps in sort of your thinking, that's also attached in this packet. Did I miss anything?
That was good. Yeah, and I think just this process will be helpful too, if we're communicating to the community afterwards about, if they say, did you talk about this? Did you think about these options? We can say, yes, we had kind of a formal process to go through all these, and this is where we landed. So there's a benefit to our group, but also a benefit to the community too. Yeah, so I think, or I guess the first question as a big group, is anything missing from the list that we've talked about that isn't included?
Well, I would just add 2 things, if you don't mind. Just based on my conversation with Mike, it was, he was basically pitching to Senate Education Committee. What they did in Rhode Island was they took two basically $500 million bonds. So Rhode Island ended up with $1 billion bond that then they were able to disperse to the schools because of infrastructure issues and the problems like we're seeing, here in Vermont. And so it's obviously not here, it's widespread throughout the state. So he said that some schools would get like 20% funding, some schools, it was kind of minimal, and this wasn't common, but some schools got 100%. So basically through AOE, through the Agency of Education, we're going to get that report, right, of where does Danville land in the scheme of all the schools for like how bad the situation is. And so that's going to come out soon. And then it seemed like Mike Pichek was definitely sort of pushing through, should we do a state level bond? And so to me, it just raises the conversation to bring into the mix, like how quickly are we moving forward? Obviously, there's space issues that need to be addressed. And bonding, would be part of that. And what about, what could be offered through the treasurer, from a state level? So I think it's just, I just want to keep it in mind, because in July soon, if they thought July, we're going to know, because if Danville lands on the like, whoa, we're at the sort of bottom of the level, and they do this bond, then we would be, potentially open to be getting some money through the state like that. So I just want to keep that out there as part of the conversation. And the other thing that I would say that really sort of stuck in my mind from the last time we met was there were basically in the 2 groups, like Stacy's crew and then our crew here, we were kind of focused on the high school situation, right? We were talking about like, and I know this is like a big thing for Bruce and for many people, like if we want to have this option of a high school here, how do we make that happen? What should that look like? But then the other group, like Stacy's crew, they came in from the, like, we do such early education so well, how can we kind of expand that and make sure that that's like known, et cetera. And they're 2 different things and they're really important. So I just want to make sure that it kind of comes up with what you were just talking about in the list, right?
Yeah,
Of just,
that's right. When you see this, it breaks it down.
Okay, you had
High
that.
school, yeah.
perfect.
But actually, Allison, another good point, this is a really not great option, but do emergency fixes. Emergency, like, there's a do nothing option, really. If we don't do anything and we just fix emergencies,
Mhm.
that's an option, not great.
Which I know is not a long-term option by
Right.
any means, it's just, is it worth waiting? And I don't know the answer to that, obviously. Is it worth waiting to see where Danville lands on the list and what comes up from a funding standpoint? Because they seemed receptive to that, it seemed fairly successful in Rhode Island. And I just didn't know if that would help us out.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. It's good to have as many options that we can talk about. I feel comfortable.
I've got a question. We have these options now. Perhaps if we combine a few, I mean, that's a possibility.
Yeah,
And we can do one for the air handling, for example, and then looking way down the road, the high school.
yeah, and
Mhm.
actually, that part of that last question is identify one immediate fix or
Oh, I see.
immediate, and then one long-term. And it may.
Yeah, okay.
So that's,
okay.
yeah, and I
That's
think
it.
if you can think outside the box too, or if
Sure.
you think of another way of going about this, that works too.
But we're focusing on the space,
Space,
not
just space.
necessarily on the
This is on the space needs
it's
only.
about the space, not about the
Mhm.
Yeah. Just to kind of keep us, keep us focused, and that is what Sarah said, is we need 2 extra classrooms for the preschool.
The
Um,
programs, in other words, is what we're
Yeah.
really emphasizing
right,
tonight.
yeah. Any other?
And with the preschool, also should have, make sure that everyone does have a bathroom in it.
Yeah,
Um,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So it's not just adding 2 rooms on, it would be either remodeling or something like that, so
yeah,
we're up to standards.
Does it require one bathroom or 2 or
One.
just one?
One working bathroom.
Which one?
I've got a question for you maybe in the beginning here, Sean, but if we do build a new building. It can be up against the existing building if we have that 1.5 hour construction wall
The fire,
with openings.
correct.
So that is an option which you all ought to know about. That is, it isn't out in the field on its own. It can actually be up against the.
actually, Rob, I think we do have that
That is on
listed.
here,
It's,
Oh.
when you guys see this, it says, because you mentioned that before, the one
Yeah,
in the bus loading area.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's in here too, and
Okay,
yeah, so if anything, and if you find that something's missing, just jot it down and maybe have a person who's a note taker in your group and write down questions that come up and.
okay.
I think that'd be good, so we'll come back and share and we can, look at those notes.
Molly, Karina's in the waiting room.
Oh, okay.
Perfect. So I think if we do 3 groups, maybe like 3, 2, and 3, does that feel okay? Kind of an odd number. And we've got
And I'm
copies.
sorry, I just wanted to add one last thing because we're talking about the space issue as obviously a big priority. And so, and I'm just thinking to myself back to that piece of the high school. Because I feel like there is real relevance around the fact of if that is a visionary futures, that's the direction, are you building this sort of space for these extra rooms? Or are you thinking about the longer term plan from a high school standpoint? So I feel like it's just part of how do we pull that in, it's like the short term, long term,
Yeah,
but I just want to keep that and have us maybe just keep that in mind as we're talking about, like, are we doing this separate space next to the school, away from the school? And what is that going to be intended for?
Yeah.
So,
I think
Yeah.
a good question is like, if we're thinking about the immediate need, what happens to that in the long term,
Mhm.
an option in the long term, what does
Mhm.
it turn into, it's something that I think is.
could it evolve into that if that goes that way? Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
and I think the Zoom people, this is gonna be a bit more challenging, and I don't know if you all can chat together somehow. Yeah, you guys could probably type in the chat, if you have the agenda in front of you, we're just gonna go through the questions that were listed on the agenda in the, what section was it? Number 4 section. If you all wanna chat together and do that, or you can do it on your own, that's an option too. It's a little bit harder to do. Okay.
It's for.
Can you hear me? This is Bruce.
All those papers. now.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi there. This is Bruce. Can anybody hear me?
Do you actually put out
Yeah.
anything to?
Can you hear us? Feel free to grab that.
So we're gonna.
You had it, okay.
Well, yeah.
Nice.
I'm in second place. This works.
Dave, yeah.
Mary? Okay, just Bruce is trying to say,
Hello?
we begin.
Can you hear us, Bruce?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
You got,
So, yeah, I do have the agenda in front of me. It sounds like I don't know who else is on Zoom, so I'm not sure who I can speak with. But I would just like to make a recommendation because I feel like sometimes at these meetings we're discussing things that we've already discussed. And a couple of times at these meetings, we've been given homework assignments. And I would ask that between now and the next meeting, everybody go back to at least 2018 and look at the school board minutes. And I know the first thing people are going to say is, oh gosh, I'm very busy. Well, I'm very busy also, and I'm not trying to be difficult, but I've already heard 3 questions asked tonight that the answers would have been answered in previous school board minute meetings. So I'm just asking that in the interest of time and in the interest of, getting answers already out of the way and then moving on. So that's all I want to say for now. Just a recommendation. When we had the facilitator, we had a homework assignment. I'll be the first to admit I wasn't great at doing homework in high school, but I did do my homework assignment on that one. And so I'm just saying that, if people could just go back and look through school board minutes, they might see that there's answers to questions that they come to a meeting and ask, because this just didn't happen overnight. It's been an ongoing issue since at least 2018 when Dave Schillen brought it to our attention. Anyway, so as far as the breakout groups, obviously that's difficult when you're participating by Zoom. So I'll hold off for a while, but I'll listen and then I'll jump back in when we get back on board. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you, Bruce.
There's something that made a bill.
Our first question are all of the options viable for these options?
So yeah, Bruce, Karina is on, she's on Zoom.
I think so.
You both can either go through the questions on your own, or you can try to choose.
The reality is it depends on what you need to know. You're not gonna find a community building. Will think about it.
Yeah, but I think that
And there's not another building. We're in the building. Right? So it's one of those. But that's not a solution. If we're just looking at it, it's not a solution.
I think they're.
Have
some experience. The third one here is everything more than
okay, we'll try to wrap up this part of it by,
to get through the year or whatever.
Right.
So.
by, let's do 30 minutes.
30 minutes. Okay. Sounds good.
That way we can
Yeah,
follow.
I just don't think that that's realistic,
yeah.
or viable. And again, it's the number of problems associated with separate programs, eating them, coverage.
I think
So.
have to reconfigure the menu.
No, I guess.
Yeah.
Probably.
Now,
The only one that would be possible. It's not
Right.
The community, library, community center. is still a thing.
Really close.
And the community-
You're gonna get preschool in winter. And again, it's, I always like the number of individuals who have
I know, that's
to
what I'm.
interact with their core services like for specific needs like that. I just don't think it's viable.
Is it worth it? Because it's
Works are very.
Right.
Because of the generator.
The structure on site is what I would say, kind of really.
Very.
Well, yeah, yes, you can, say, you have ADA issues there though, you know,
But
because.
that's where the.
Yeah. is, I would think that would be the most affordable way. And if we can buy building a whole other freestanding
That
building,
would probably be,
requiring.
it could be easily addressed.
That's what I
You
wanted
know,
to
all
see.
sorts of.
His granddaughter.
Where that would go, that'd be a whole
I think that should be fenced in outdoor space.
But.
I mean.
That's got your confidence on like playground.
Exactly.
Most.
Fenced in.
Less living area.
Like around the side. Like
That's
there's.
the other thing. When you talk about all this.
Side.
I'm just like our other meetings.
Yeah, no, it's just fine. But just like, let's say, like, there's at least the front and then this one, so I just like.
How far out? Expanding the bubble coming in the next 5 years, or is it gonna be?
I feel like that is really worth
They are
it.
connected.
Yeah.
Then I would say. Add-on structure. Or possibly a separate, but an add-on structure.
The problem is it's so hard to predict.
Town hall just has
So
there's a.
it's like, how do you predict beyond?
Stage and hardwood.
Yeah,
floor,
it's exactly.
wood gym. And the second floor doesn't have a bathroom.
Because like, right now.
Yeah,
It doesn't have here, like, we're experiencing all this. Out of our elementary classrooms are extended to 5 classrooms. And they're full. So like, there's an elementary bubble right now, but you can say.
I don't know.
that'll look like it.
So.
Right,
you
is
could
it just like a 5-year
potentially
bump
use that
after that, things are
as
gonna go
a-
back?
like,
I think that's what you're looking at.
Yeah.
Right, and it's, and I
Seven
think
rather
so
than
there's
the-
how, but how that becomes. I know that it's.
Well, I don't know, I'm not. I use the brand, you know, my, no, I understand what you're saying, but.
Yeah.
I guess there's what information do we say, what does it show now? You know.
And the sign, maybe that was- That's out. So that was just like out of my.
Yeah, because they have the templates down there.
Right.
And everybody everywhere. For me,
Many are
I'm- it's not a program.
Currently, this is actually a kindergarten class.
That's where I went to kindergarten.
The one around the. The one around the.
So. It's, I don't know, what's the street, John, what do you think?
Down Hill Street, big white one.
Oh, yeah.
Next to,
Bills.
historical.
Gotcha.
Obviously.
Is that the five club? That's for me?
I think,
Yeah.
Want something to write on it.
See, I think a little bit of like a head shift and like.
Parents are driving and the bus.
But they're having potential where people all get pushed back.
Really, a lot.
But kind of sit back and answer this.
That's what
You know, the thing is, in my mind.
Right, right.
I thought of it, but, you know, being on the select board for years, that there's so many other things we have to do. It all boils down to money. I know I brought it up. Whenever it is, But, so the way to approach it, mind. I don't get a lot
But if
of-
it's part of a master plan.
It'd be welcome,
which was to do-
realistically,
And
once
honestly,
we
like,
get
that could
other
be a lot of
funding.
money. Would allow money to be put
Then
out.
you build on that.
Yep.
That would be the
So.
It would be.
We need to come up with a ballpark realistic number, how much additional.
You're just for a minute.
For that, it'd be like a whole lot of those towns, realistically.
And what about like,
Right, so pushing people.
That big wide open, you know, because I would say, I don't buy into the elevator, actually. No, it's people do here. You know, just. I don't know that it does, I mean, the gym space to, you know, practice schedule. The budget varsity increase so much.
Depending on the schedule.
I'm told they just ballpark. Come up with, if you're gonna do something like that. for the year, no,
Well, I've got it.
You could, I mean, you could all come up. Well, you could start on any given hall, max.
Here.
So
Yeah.
it seemed like the reality checks on that.
So,
Space at the church.
if you're, you know,
School, that's-
realistically, if you're gonna do. I think you could only come up.
Well, there's the community center.
So,
You know,
I
long
think
term,
this has.
anything else you want to do.
It's gonna have to come.
For something.
Future, if we look at.
Like, do some stuff
I
there.
think realistically, you can.
It's
let's
money.
do that, you can just get rid of that one.
The one, you know.
Right.
The demolition, you don't like, there's no way to finance that without contact.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, none of us are still gonna be here if that population grows to a place that we have that.
Well, and that was part of the problem. You know, when some of this was being talked about, it's like, you know, I think a lot of people knew that, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Oh, no, absolutely.
It was really, well, look at that.
But we would have.
Well, it was shocking.
That space is used for other things.
Again,
So.
I was shocking how many people thought that the school board was like.
You don't want
"Let's
to move
go."
all the pre-K stuff.
Because nobody on the school board was like.
That's not.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's all like, we got. School monitor, and you're like, okay, that's good to know. Now what? You know, like that's.
Then you
I
get.
don't know what the mathematician. Books.
So, back to, you know, the options.
They have.
Feel like we
One site,
district
2 days
structure of some kind, something.
That's seeing all that
You know,
space.
Well, if we're looking at a short term option, that's probably our best. short
So
term
that's,
option.
you know, that's.
And I think we can, depending what you put up, determines its longevity.
but that would be
Yeah.
something that had important, you know, that would be left.
Yeah.
Money we're talking, obviously, we've got other. Things to address here.
Okay.
But, you know, now we're talking a little more realistic.
Monday through Friday things. Essentially, we're looking at scheduling.
Well.
Yeah.
The reason why I keep referring to pages.
Oh, yeah, no,
That's
we're
for
just
us.
like, wherever to ask.
I think if it's private, that's from stock, so it's,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm very,
It's just not-
whatever, we're very encouraged now. You know, now, we're getting. Yeah, as far as the construction, so it's like a person, that was, is that steel? or
We're
would that
constantly
be
moving around.
like
As one that would go over temporary structure.
Well, if it was gonna be.
Yeah, so long as, I mean, I don't know if the church is in charge of land and all. How, so that's, yeah, it's.
Right. So then I think the question becomes, like, what is that new structure using? Right, are we building and are we putting up a structure for preschool, you know, like, right?
Who does that and how?
Remember at the meeting, you're putting in a structure for preschool and you're moving preschool, you just create a.
So.
A preschool
Wing,
building.
whatever, and you create a
It's like
preschool
behind
friendly facility.
Oh,
And
I was like, right, I would think, it's like, what you're talking about, those stores there.
Whatever these buildings. Yeah, you gotta have bathroom.
Or whatever you're gonna go to. You can see it, you see it, that's sort of coming, like, on the surface to. Yeah, I mean, it's like, if you like, see it, there's like, just like, there's a house like way up on the hill. Behind it, or just below the house.
Is it a postal or like it's like?
We broke down just the West Hampton Church class.
Are they using it as a space like?
Structure.
Yeah.
Okay, they really were West Hampton Church.
You know what I mean?
Wait,
I would.
Does that have like a downstairs room or?
Yeah.
And then.
It will now. But we're just.
I mean, my school, not the walls. Yeah. A lot lot of it. So
So my
there's-
scale-
Fairly sound.
My building, my building was, no,
Yeah.
my building was
I didn't think
built
so.
open
So
floor
that's
plan in the
number one.
70s. And so when I went to school, there was literally just rolling parts, like, so it's- and you would, they would just be like, oh, we need this many more classrooms, and they just need three people together. And now they, no, and that's like, well, now they put in a lot of like, most walls. They're not like, they're not full walls because it wasn't designed that way. They were in, so they put in a lot of more permanent, walls or semi-permanent, but like, so you can definitely create that, but again, you're gonna like, so let's say you put in a structure to support police preschool functions, right? And if you do that, you kind of have to build it
Yeah, you have to
anyways,
throw
because
it
you have to have the bathroom. But I think what the flexibility of that is that it covers, because what you do is you then, you know, feasibly move, potentially move something out of the mission, so you're not space, you can shift things all around inside the building.
You can have modular.
And then if ever you're low on preschool and you're like, hey, now we have a first grade classroom out there instead.
So the idea.
I should
being like,
actually.
maybe we still
On the actual.
That's
part of the new structure. we-
Actually, this was built.
Plans to expand that,
This is.
rather than something.
The
This building,
addition,
another
the small addition
valve.
they're doing
Yeah.
to.
Which is
the
what
hospital.
And this is.
That's.
They're in the process of doing it right now. The project is.
You know, this is. Yeah.
Five.
Little gym.
Those were the hallway.
Right.
But. Air handler up above, everything done, full sprinkler and everything else. It's $1 million.
Actually, what you're looking at
I could look at that as added on to the hospital.
in this.
I could find out.
The cafeteria
How much
is
all
over.
It's,
No, because that means the, you know, ballpark, because it's being done right now, it's right this time.
No.
Right.
This has been.
Hold it up.
State of law right now, that's.
And this
How much
structure.
Okay, is, well, that was,
Yeah, what's a normal preschool classroom size?
I mean, yeah, it's- and like, for regular.
Oh, I don't, and I, yeah, there's,
High school was
it's
like.
dictated by the license too, like, you have to cover.
Right, that's where.
But at that point, it wouldn't be that, either way, it wouldn't be, it would be a fairly hectic thing because you're incorporating all the.
Oh.
And everything that pretty much what the school would require. Plus, actually, maybe.
Right.
more. We got, like, and everything else.
Yeah.
So, what I mean is, I think it's, you know, fairly accurate, that's all that would have to be, you know,
Because we lost.
somewhere in that range, you know.
Yeah, I mean, they all get used, so we have to find.
But, you know, if you had to annex it, you go for it, square feet or whatever.
Yes, we have.
That
Modular is.
you know, we're gonna because at that point, because you're including all the service and everything, already, that's, you know. So that little square footage is not-
Office and.
So it wouldn't give us a strongly
They
accurate
do
estimate
have
for this.
in their.
Here.
Yeah, but I haven't heard.
In their
Asked about
The state
maybe
did go to look at it, but it was on
have
lots of
some,
she was like-
preschool, right? You want to get some of the preschool stuff. I don't think it's ideal, you want to just do the all the way to grade. I said everything. So when they become first graders, second graders.
Begin with
Question.
That's how I.
love that every question.
Well, you know, but that's.
For the art.
Yeah, well, it's a fair question.
That's what I was.
Yeah.
That's my thinking came on.
That's the thing is, we're already starting to skip and jump again into something we can't afford. You know, that should.
One, the other part of that too, though, is when you think about, like the level that you create by adding a preschool. Is one, the square footage,
Right.
our classrooms are not running at capacities that many of them lot of schools are that way. There's still particularly classrooms, not all of them, but many. And then part of that too is that when you're adding all those hospitals, yes, it's now 3 classes or however many days it is. But it's also
It's still being great.
to the third and like 3-year and 4-year. So yeah, you're adding, but you're at least adding, you're adding.
This room here.
And so, and I don't know, again, and I know
Whatever
whatever
grade.
like which grades that she would consider in the full.
That's maybe something we need to know.
And I think it's something you just need to write down, because I think there's a lot of times, but like, because there's some that they would consider, and I don't know what they consider. Like my that I can have 3.4 kids in, and I teach middle school, and I know elementary is the same, but I don't know what they can do here.
And they each classroom.
So that would mean like it form, if you had 26 kids, you need another teacher in the room, is that how that works?
They would have
You
to,
also probably have to have
they would have to create another classroom. So, because if I have 26, that means that 3 other
That's
classes.
all.
So if that's when you break it down, it's all 16.
I know, it doesn't make sense.
I think you're.
I've done 23.
Or bus,
Couple.
like, that's, you have a beautiful level.
Once you get over it, it feels better. It really does.
The other piece where the additional structure is sort of like looking.
We are not
Like
at
where they
a
propose to put
lack
it.
of
Some
land.
suggestions are the plus. That's the color tenders.
Somewhere.
And because if we're adding a price with building,
Close
we're
with
not.
that.
Right, like there's no way to use that building to access.
Something up. To make it so it's playable.
When you do lunch deliveries, like you would do that,
Oh,
you're
sorry.
gonna want that
For a sort of.
feasible for
Right, so I think that plays into like proximity, like the year. It's not far.
I
away,
think
but
it's a great thing.
But they-
to
they
do
noted
middle
that,
school
like,
experience.
They do.
But that's one of those that you build 3 years and you're like, this is about what I'm talking about. but you wouldn't get it right. I don't think a year is a good
Well, that
school
would
out.
No, I was thinking location.
Right, but you know, but like,
Yeah.
It's, and also that,
Plumbing out there, like.
yeah, that's a big too, like,
Like.
yeah, and it's also like, the gym is the closest thing to that, that's.
That's common. Closer to the building.
Yeah, so it's like that, there's, unless you build like a whole retaining wall or anything, like, that's not.
So how does the tear down the 1937 building play into this?
But maybe we look at
Yeah.
figure out if they can be integrated or can be.
I'm sorry, excuse me. The 1937 building is which part?
The very front pillars.
Oh, yeah.
The 1957 is.
And the place it's.
It's,
It's in the-
Yeah, it's the, no, it's not the gym, it's the kindergarten. You're looking at the bottom part, you know.
Yeah.
That in space with there.
And which was the book?
The 57.
Okay.
The 57 is, has.
I can't believe I think
Right.
this
The
discussion.
37 is partially
A lot more
sound
people
electrical.
considering like a lot more. The reason.
Shuffling through.
We need.
I just don't. Yes, so it's feasible. I don't think it, honestly, as far as the student program, I don't think it speaks well. You know, like, it looked like we're not sitting there like this. I'm not sure if that's like arbitrary, but we're also thinking about a time now where it's a teacher's market and schools can't get a teacher for them. And they're like, if you're trying to hire preschool.
All of these are
they're like,
based-
oh, you're- educational things that you
But
need
you're
to do.
teaching down in the circle, which is away from all your colleagues.
You have 4 walks.
I think your plan, your room to expand like.
Or you're gonna have to travel to your students who are down the road, like either way.
Yeah.
Sort of when the
I
bus
don't-
comes around, right? The problem is that in that building is all.
Terrible.
Terrible.
Not great.
It's
finance
In
in
that
that
building.
cheaper to bring that place up.
Would actually tear that down.
I don't know, I tend to think now, I mean, I'm a little familiar with that. So through the years, you know, we basically kind of, it's been left to its own devices out in North Kansas. They budget a little bit. Our community club,
Because they may wanna do.
historical site.
And we see lots of that.
Oh, what happens?
I heard them. There's some kind of flooding or something.
Right.
Needs to look at. That's what
Yeah, they're.
everybody's.
Yeah.
Far at sea. You know, just doing it.
Okay, and then.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I'll get to the lunch.
About 10 minutes.
So what I'm
And
just
then
wondering.
transportation, you know, that's an added cost back and forth through the course of the year, you gotta figure that out. And 20 grand a year, just for that one.
You've got families potentially dropping off at two very different locations, right? Like if you've got older kids.
Yeah, and the answer is.
Yeah.
Well, that's true.
I guess, yeah.
Schools all over the
Right.
town.
And you just replan, like it's something families have to
Well, yeah,
replan.
Yeah.
They didn't, they wanted. to-
Oh, nobody buses up there. How many were half-
Yeah, I know.
Like half, ever since COVID. The drop off line is going away.
Yeah, well, the 57
Yeah, you're on your own. Good luck. I feel like we talked about more in this, we're running out of time. And how feasible or feasible. Would you consider those short-term or long-term options or?
But yeah, I mean, the Jewish, I think they'd be pretty understanding.
I don't think.
They're not wild. They don't have,
Because you still have to maintain this.
yeah,
building.
no, it's not like. It's not like it's really. Yeah, you're right.
You're gonna have a lot of the same problems.
Like the, between these sort of
And
two.
there's no
phases of,
guarantee.
like, build and then.
You know, what the academy's gonna do or whatever other place you're talking about.
You know, what makes the most sense.
As far as the regional.
Build is not touch this stuff.
I think that, you know,
Well,
obviously that's a whole
That has to be dealt with.
big
Sure.
discussion.
Yeah, you can build a separate structure and not touch it.
And I can't do that.
You know, that would have place.
Everybody,
the
the own level
air
of
handlers and stuff.
wanted to go away, every cabinet is.
Put something
Oh my God, by their fingernails.
Well, that's
What else is thinking now?
Yeah.
And maybe there's like some permitting thing you have to get.
Discussion with the
with them
staff,
and
let's create facility.
And then you can expand upon that.
Yeah, right.
Well, right.
Yeah,
because
but
they
you know
just
what?
leave it out there and have a conversation and then have it to be voted out the board.
Yeah.
All these whole discussion.
I think, in my mind, no, I'm not advocating for, but I can see that happening.
It just-
Outstanding, yeah.
Well, especially if, you know, my daughter considered graduated from up
Any,
there.
the money or permitting.
You know, I mean, they're talking about.
Yeah,
closing
certainly,
a couple
certainly
of
not,
years.
not perfect.
Has that asset sitting there.
Like,
What,
When money comes in, sort of like,
Yeah.
but it's
Not
not-
the detail.
but like, I think one of the,
We get a price tag on what we're doing
No.
for each.
right, but one of the things that,
Used as future.
should think about too is that,
And it's never happened.
if we talk about like doing a demo and rebuild, say the night. That's probably not,
well, you know,
Say, look at it, but.
that's probably.
Yeah,
not.
but
We're
I
gonna
know
have
you're
to-
right, we talked about. But we went to all of those meetings, it was
So-
very much like, we looked at what does it look like to merge a school. What does it look like to build a new high school, and I don't think any, I think with a small town town comes from this identity that it's really. And while, you know, while some people might eventually hit the point where they'll boot tuition out to high school students, I think they would do that before they would be like, let's combine the twin fields, like they just want to compete with twin fields.
Well, and I think that we have to remember the hills and
Yeah.
valleys are all.
And that is completely-
It's a really hard commute, no matter which way.
And that's a really
you
good
go.
weakness.
There's a reason why there is a school in those locations, right?
I used to say that all the time, well, how many years?
Exactly.
How long has he been on the board?
And it before this.
Okay. Every year, you always hear, well, Kevin's gonna close, and we're gonna get. Well, the thing is, even if they did close, it's not a natural flow to go back up over the hill, over the sand hill.
Yeah.
They're gonna go to.
East Treasure.
Yeah.
Right, so
But or if their parents work far enough away, they're gonna just go to them.
Exactly, so I never really thought that it was realistic.
we're gonna get, we had to look at 17 miles.
Right, it's a no.
But if that opened up the space over here.
You might pick up one or two that were twins or something like that, but beyond that.
Down, I don't know.
Well, that's.
Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't
Feel.
Yeah.
no, I think if they did a regional one, they would have to build it in a
Short term.
like they would have to put it
Well,
somewhere.
Maybe
in
it's
that-
because if they're having one population or-
Put it next to the sugar shack. I'm gonna live in that one very fast.
What I see that was they were talking about. Well,
Yeah.
you know, if they were talking about. When I, you know, if they stay closed, they have a facility there with.
And then.
Square footage and combined, I don't know. Whatever lines are around.
Yeah, you're,
You know,
problem with that is like, where do you fall?
it's not a ideal location.
Does the fact
Close that to
the
us.
X26 where you're work against us. And
I think that is some of the things that the academy would let.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Well, and also what's the life expectancy of LI right now? So,
Yeah, that's the other
There
thing.
is
So
a-
LI, Danville, you know, maybe possibly Academy. Yeah, and any striker wouldn't know, like Hazard or whatever. Wouldn't know, and that's a long reach over there, but still, you got all that square footage and asset sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah,
You know, you're, and all this high schoolers are scrounging for space and money and everything.
Yeah.
What better?
But I could not
But it
imagine
would,
that.
and it wouldn't, you know. it's not gonna
But like,
happen.
even if you talk, even if that sort of, they were like, let's make this push for this, here, these playing fields. You were like, okay,
Now.
Marshfield can go that way if they want, but Plainfield's gonna go the other. No, that's so far.
All we look at is what's that tax rate?
Exactly. Viable.
Yeah, it's what that tax rate.
We do have two outstanding schools, plus it touches on a bunch of other standpoint of like border, like, I know there's a lot of other
In as well. Academies.
and,
Seemed like regional. made sense when we went all through that.
So I mean, my feeling on it was saying that we have.
I know that.
Nobody wants to join it.
And they've always been really good with all the other
And then,
areas that we want school choice and saying, well, you a good neighbor, discount. Nothing to do that, like, they've always been very generous. Those right things, and I think that. I always thought there was a rival. There's no rival, it's only one way. You go to St. James and like. This high school, they have no idea, because it's just a community, it's very different. And they're offering, you know, kids from basic, standard, accelerated, HP. Online, When we went to go, sign my kids up this next semester. He's some crazy courses, you know, and then because they couldn't offer it, are they gonna come?
If you have
Yeah.
really good.
Take the number and see maybe in the program.
So why not take advantage of that? That's their strength. And so, and same with, I mean, they offer, you know, all sorts, well, they
Yeah,
used
it's, you
to,
know,
they just.
I love,
really
I love
bad-
Brendan, I just really worry about that. But I just,
They got themselves in financial.
yes, which I work there, but I mean, I work.
So it's,
If I
yeah.
spend an hour future around what Lyndon does. You know.
Wrap up in 1 minute, please.
Really, the high school.
And then it so happened we were able to negotiate. with-
but I mean, I don't, I mean. but-
Well, they're welcome.
You know, like. Different feeling than I ever expected. I didn't expect. that.
Yeah, I think the thing that we can talk about, I think that's what you were saying. What we need to think about is better. Citizens aware of that. I don't think anyone would question. You send our kids to the academy, they're going to have more options. They're gonna have a very different experience.
Every now and
It's gonna be
again.
larger classes, but that- I think right, and at that level.
No, very religious, man,
super appropriate. And I think and it's one of those.
The other option.
Because we're always told we know this, that we know what the financial implications is. But then it's always like, what do we do? What we do, what we do. And the only thing is that we report that we still have to make sure that's facility. To save money, like that's not gonna happen, and so that's the part of it that we need to sort of think about. What provider revenue.
And out of those like spaces that we
Yeah.
create, you know.
Well, you can create with the additional functional space.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Totally, totally.
Make sure people get snacks too. Get snacks.
Yeah, take a snack.
Okay, for our-
Brain power.
The next 4.5 minutes, grab a snack.
4.5.
I know. And the answer, I don't know. Look, I was cracking up.
Get information from the other groups.
I always recommend these. Because my daughter is softball. Oh, yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah. The lines are recycled.
You know, you're gonna get.
Did you admit Sarah?
Sarah's going down, we already had a breakout. She's in there now.
Well,
She's back in there now.
But she wants you to make her a co-host.
Oh, okay.
No.
She's the co-host.
I almost.
Sarah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think I'm good now.
Okay, we have a breakout room. I think we need to-
You're in your own breakout room.
I didn't know.
No, our plan is to stay there forever.
Yeah.
We,
Solve all the problems and we can.
we don't play hockey, right? So that could.
Well, I brought,
And there's such a great program.
No.
No.
Trying to figure out. To play out. Yeah.
Pride.
Even by the time I. We wanted
Money, yeah. It's kind of. When they come with an emergency. Yeah. No, they're gonna be doing this.
Like, once you get up there, you're good. So my son, second son, so his father, he's like, when they fought him, he's still.
Yeah.
So,
But I'm just like.
Like, around like, this is my thing, I don't wanna do, and then my second son got on the soccer field and he was like.
Yeah, he's down in North Carolina. Yeah. Yeah.
He's like.
He was up here when I went to see him, didn't have it. Different stuff. that they do.
Especially when they can have that.
Okay, we're gonna have we're gonna, couple, or, are we ready? Cracker Jack,
I love it.
right. So now we'll hear from the group, did you want to?
Yep, right on the board. Yeah, so we'll just sort of like popcorn around between the groups, and see what thoughts folks have. So we're starting with number one, are all the options viable and realistic? If not, which ones can we definitively cross off? Maybe if we start with
Group one.
number one over here.
Oh, just number one.
For number one option, using community buildings, we would like to cross off faith at churches. We felt like that was not realistic for during the school day, setting things back up the way the church wants it afterwards regularly. The North Danville School is far away and has issues. The Masonic building doesn't have adequate space and is being rented as a restaurant right now, so we thought we could cross those three out.
Great. How about group number two, Lance and Harris?
So definitely agreed on Masonic building, also added the town hall, we already used that for elementary basketball, apparently, so. We're already sort of using that for that space, as far as we know. We felt the community center with, sort of scheduling issues and also, getting the space back to, good, it'd be tough to use as sort of a permanent type of space for it. We thought that there might be space at the Congregational Church, that could be more of a permanent spot, so we wanted to reach out to them to see. And we also, wanted to learn more about North Danville's viability, just as for pre-K.
It's got plumbing problems.
Yeah, lots of problems.
And that's, you know, it's like when you're, and so like, we're wondering though, like reality wise, and maybe you already know, but like we just had the conversation of like, what are the actual numbers compared to like the build space? Because they do have the outdoor thing and maybe it's just not a reality, but is it worth having someone go in so we could be like, oh, here's the numbers. Oh, it's actually not as much as we thought. It's viable to be considered because it's a separate thing. You think no, and I
I
know.
think anybody could walk through there and think, and with a list of some of the codes of current like standards and go, nope,
Yeah,
pretty quickly.
and like codes, meaning, I understand. what you mean by
Just
codes,
building
but I
codes
mean,
for.
no, I understand that, but more so what I'm saying is like fixable. Are they, is there something that could be worked? So it's like, oh, well, actually, if we did this, that, and the other, and maybe that's a no-go, but it's just like, is it worth
Do
exploring?
you think, was your group talking about it as like a permanent preschool space? Because we were also thinking like the traveling back, like it's not something that.
Permanent.
More permanent.
Yeah, like getting, because talking with Sarah, she said it's the most regulated,
Mhm.
and toughest, so if it's. Obviously, it'd be great to have everything here, but if there was something we discussed as our group, if there was something that we could move out, that would. Free up
Makes
space, but also get that more highly regulated group on a different location. our two spots that we thought of would be a church, there's.
Queen Peace, Queen, yeah.
Congo, and then the one in West End, which we don't know, it would require some phone calls.
Mhm.
And then just the North Daniel School, like, how much is that? And would it be cheaper than a new build?
Because
So
it
that,
has.
so that was kind of like the more pressing need,
Mhm.
like, part of.
It just isn't like being used effectively and it's,
It has a library in it.
Yeah.
That is used. That's
Right,
the-
remember
there's a
that.
Library, there's a gym, and there's a kitchen.
and then there,
That's all that's in the building.
what about the space? Well, there's, and I mean, maybe they're too small, but like across from the library, right? There's the spaces there.
I mean, I think they use it as part of the library, it's just like a room, community center room.
Yeah, and that's where we're just like, is there a realist, like, is it
Yeah,
worth
I'm just
exploring?
thinking space wise, that room is smaller than one preschool classroom, like I don't. know
And then
if
there's
you're
that
putting
whole auditorium space down there.
The gym.
Yeah,
So
Sarah's actually, she's on the Zoom. Sarah, do you want to weigh in on, they're talking about using some church space for the preschoolers.
Yeah. What I can say specifically about the North Danville is that like Lance said, and I've talked with him about, it's a very tricky on the stringency of their requirements. Because it doesn't follow AOE requirements. It's a totally different entity and it falls under DCF. We could have our early ed coordinator go through the space. She used to be a licensor. So she could look at it quickly. I can tell you that there are rooms within our own building that wouldn't pass preschool licensure. So I hear you, Allison, on is it worth bringing it up to code and paying and spending? I don't know that, but we could ask Bethany to go through and see if it's even worth going further.
and I just also wonder on top of that, thank you, Sarah, does it make sense to do any level of sort of more permanent modular down there to have this sort of preschool space? And maybe it doesn't, again, just ideas to throw out there. I'm not attached to anything, but does it make sense to sort of create, they've got the outdoor realm. I don't know what the building would need. It's just a possibility, it's sort of this unused besides the library space that could be this really cool
Well, it is used for
Place.
quite a few things out
for,
there.
yeah, town wise and.
So, before you get too far down that road, I would think you need to talk to the town first.
Mhm,
Because there is a few entities that use that on a regular
Mhm.
basis.
right.
So,
And I just wonder, like, from a Monday through Friday, I guess to me, it was just like, should we take a deeper look at it and see the reality and also the modular thing that Stacy just mentioned? Does that make any level of sense versus if it's structurally sound even?
Make notes.
I think Ms. Walton,
It's not structurally sound?
I just
No.
think that right at this point, we shouldn't try and knock any ideas down. Let's hear what everybody has to say. Here are the ideas that have been formulated out of the groups, and then we can go from there. I think
Well,
at
and
this point, we're still in the.
I think that's true, but also our job was sort of to knock ideas out.
Yeah.
And so, well, so in, as
Well, we
our,
did.
so group 3, we didn't break it down the way you all did. We basically just looked at it and said it is not viable. Number one, it's not viable simply for the fact that it's preschool to begin with. To use existing, right, because it was written as like use existing buildings. And it's not viable, not just because of all of the regulations for preschool, but also because so if you move it to North Danville, now you're also feeding kids out there. So you're adding in a whole additional cost that you're creating a new school.
Right.
You also still have to provide services, you still have to provide specials. And so
Gotcha.
if you do something close, a building here, you're still not trekking preschoolers anywhere. Like that's a time suck. It's an energy suck and it's a waste of resources. And you could certainly bring people into that space for things. You could have specials go to the space. You could have people who provide services go to that space. but you still have the issue of like feeding.
Yeah.
And again, even if you think about it right now, you're like, that's not that bad, but then you think about it in January.
That's a big. deal.
Where their bases will freeze off
Right.
on the walk, and so
Right.
like, so just, you know, from our perspective, when we looked at number one, we just sort of went.
Yeah.
We just be at the cost, because even if North Danville is totally viable, you're now adding an additional bus stop. Which
Mhm.
isn't really a big deal, it just changes when people arrive where, you'd have to change the bus routes and whatever.
Mhm.
But you're also adding, how are we feeding them, how are we getting them services, and North
Right.
Danville is not necessarily. Super close to where other people would be based.
Mhm.
Um,
That
Did
makes
you ever
sense.
think
Yeah.
about that number one in terms of any other groups besides preschool?
we did not, because when we're thinking about the building space
You were thinking about-
issue, this building does not have any additional rooms that are preschool
Right.
Qualified.
Right.
qualified.
Yeah, but our group looked at the option of maybe the high school moves out. For a few classrooms or something like that, and the preschool is in the existing building.
And we talked about that
Talked
from the
about
longer
longer
term plan of like the high school having its separate
This
space.
was kind of like the shorter term.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So let's go back to number one and hear from this group over here. Were there other options that you
Like-
felt like either were really viable or were not? We talked about the elementary.
We didn't talk about anything other than.
The,
Yeah, we're still looking at number one. and
Yeah,
those
just
things.
said no
We
go.
didn't- We just scratched it because we thought of it simply as preschool.
Right, but we also scratched number 3, which was demolish and rebuild.
Right,
We thought that that was something.
we scratched
right?
that one just because it's not financially feasible.
That's Sean, we're gonna ask Sean that.
Yeah.
You guys have a good one.
We had a question about number 3, yeah.
We should probably do two.
Yep, so let's move on to number 2. Is more information needed on any of these options? And if so, how do we gather that?
Oh,
information?
sorry, I didn't mean that. I meant
Oh, sorry, Lance.
two on the
Oh,
Oh, right.
additional structure on site.
yep.
We
okay.
kind of looked at
Fine.
each section,
Yeah.
what can we eliminate?
see.
and then-
Yeah.
Okay, so we want to talk about that
I
option.
just say, I think we literally just went on and only talked about that first.
Oh.
We're not moving fast.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess, on the first question, just sort of as a. One of the things to Nick, that we talked about nixing was the regional high school as an option, just because. One, we don't have control of that, I mean, that's something that would be, above sort of our pay grade, we'd have to figure out. And two, we didn't feel like there was really an appetite in town, I mean, the reason that we're all here
Right.
is because we don't want a regional high school. We already had this vote, we voted it down.
Mhm.
And so, that is something that, we also nixed on that list for those reasons, but. I don't know if you guys got down to number 5.
We did
Well,
not.
for the second portion, the additional structure on site, what we felt the best combination on this is if we were to do something there, it would be to do something for high school and open this all up for elementary. It would then create an environment for high school older kids. If there's posters up or age appropriate things, they can be in a separate building. But we spoke about doing a new structure on the soccer field. It's perfectly level. So out of everything in 2, we kind of nixed a few of these